the meeting to order. It is now 5:43. Tonight's meeting has been on our posted agenda. We are planning on hearing a presentation from the school building needs committee on the new Wacona Regional High School building, and then after that presentation, we'll hear from the school superintendent and assistant superintendent about the school budget. And the plan at this point, I'm not quite sure on the motion at this point of supporting or not supporting the school. At this moment, we kind of have a lot of questions to ask, and ask of one another as well as the school building needs committee. So we may not be able to give a vote this evening. So I just want to kind of preface all of this with that. So I entertain a motion to waive the minutes.
I'll move to waive the minutes.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to waive the minutes of previous meetings. And all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right.
So I have to make a disclosure here that I'm president of Hill Engineers, Architects, Planners, and as such, our company is involved in the pre-planning phase of this project here. And in that particular position and a potential for perceived conflict of interest or whatnot, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this meeting.
Okay, I'm Patel, and I'm on the school committee, and I've been there for quite a while. But I've been a member of this committee, not as long as Bill has, but tonight, Lori Kasna is the superintendent of Central Berkshire. Beside her is Melissa Falkowski, the assistant superintendent. And over here is Barbara Kraft-Reese. She's our chairman of the school committee. So you asked us to talk, and we're glad to be here. This is a great opportunity. I appreciate it. First, we're going to talk about the school building, the new project for Wacona. And for both of these presentations, we've scoped it down, try to fit in your time. And I think we've tried to hit the points that you're interested in primarily. There have been a lot of very lengthy presentations in the schools, and perhaps some of you have seen that. But if we don't get some of the stuff that we're omitting, you can certainly ask. So I'll turn this over to Lori, who's going to talk about the building project. And we have handouts that we're going to use instead of the
All right, so like Mr. Locatell said, thank you very much for having us. I certainly will do kind of an overview. It is a pared down overview from a presentation that our architect team and project manager have done in all of the communities in the past month or so. That full presentation is online. We have pared it down to what we felt would be most relevant and hopefully would answer some questions and generate more. But please do, once we go over it, the goal is to tailor our information to what questions you have. So I will go over what Ms. Falkowski is passing out. But then when you ask questions, all four of us, really depending on who the appropriate person is to respond, will do so to make sure you get as much information as possible. So again, what we have passed out here, the first thing that it really focuses on is how did we land on the decision that was ultimately voted on by the school building committee, the school committee, and approved by the Mass School Building Authority in terms of what the building would look like, that it would be new construction, in which of the models would be brought forward. So really, how did we get there? We have had quite a bit of conversations, meetings. One of the driving factors was a visioning session that took place over the course of 2 days over the course of last winter in order to say, what does this building need to do for our children? What kind of an education does it need to provide? And as a result, what does it need to look like in terms of facilities? So that is called an educational plan. That's really the first step. The Mass School Building Authority requires that you submit that, have that approved, and have that drive everything else that you do. Who will you be educating and how will you be educating them? Not next year, not in 5 years, not in 15, but really into the future. And will this building give you the ability to do so? So our educational plan is supported by the building that has been brought forward and is in front of you for vote on April 6th. That educational plan not only had to be approved by the MSBA, but also, as you probably know, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education oversees a lot of what we do. So they look at the plan for things like special education spaces. Are they adequately sized? Are they appropriately placed? Would this building be in compliance when the Department of Ed comes in, as they do every few years, and conducts an audit of our programming and our facilities? They check off on that. So our plan, fortunately, was approved by MSBA as well as the Department of Ed. So that was one of the main, if not the most important factors in selecting the building. Also looking at the long-term value, the cost of the construction options, this being the lowest cost of new construction options, and looking at how that would be economically responsible, while also looking at the needs of the building. The energy efficient, there is a slide in here, there's been a lot of conversation around this, is a LEED Silver building, will be certified as such by the MSBA, and there's a full slide that describes what that means in detail in terms of an energy efficient building far beyond the one we currently are running right now. Also, we did have to look at the overall use of the site. You do need to look at what are you working with, what would make sense, what can you do with minimal disruption. Any kinds of temporary units for students, such as mobile classrooms, those kinds of things, are completely non-reimbursable. So we want to be able to construct this new building with as minimal disruption as possible to our current student population. And we are able to do so. So where the current Wacona is will not be impacted. We will certainly have to be in constant communication with the project manager and the construction manager around safety, but that building will function and will continue to run until the new building is open. And there's actually a plot plan on here that shows you exactly where that new building will go and how that will be impacting, and also that we are going to disrupt as minimal as possible. Because essentially what you build on, likely you need, and what are the costs going to be to actually put that back in place. So for us, it's our current varsity baseball field is where it would be built. Also looking at security, not only is that just an absolute priority of our administration, but that is in our school committee. That came out as a priority of the visioning sessions, and really making sure that we do have a secure single entrance. That there was a lot of dialogue around the parking structure and around drop-off procedures with the busing, with student drivers, with parent drop-off, and really looking at with our chief of police as well as the state police. We have had several meetings and conversations with security consultants around what the entrance of this building looks like. In this day and age, there's really very little need to enter a building if you're dropping things off, that kind of thing. And current buildings are set up for that. So that's really what we looked at with the safety and security. And really, there is a benefit. We do need to be very cognizant. We have students who will continue to go to school and will not see a new high school. And really, we want to make sure that the disruption is minimal. And that once the construction happens, it's short in duration, so we are able to put this facility in front of students in the near future. And this has a short duration for construction, being that we are anticipating construction starting in the spring of 2020, and a building being able to be open in 2022. Some of the models, if you've looked online, we have, and it is a lot to cull through. So if you are looking online, you can't find something, please do ask us, because we have between everyone in our office have a fair familiarity with where it is, because there's just so much. But all of the different models do show you the cost as well as when they would have opened. And obviously the longer a project takes, the costlier it becomes. So again, the site plan, if you're familiar, which I'm gonna have a high confidence that you are, knowing the size of the town you've been through or by Wacona. You can see that the first one just shows where the orientation of the current building is, where it's seated, and then it shows you where it will be going on our current varsity baseball field. There will be a disruption for a short period of time. They will play at Wacona Park during that period of time. and that's fairly common that somebody has that disruption, but that field will be replaced as part of the project when the new building is opened. We also will gain a field in the process because the demolition of the old building frees up more space. The second site plan does show you where the new school building will be. Shows you that we will have plenty of additional parking, additional handicap parking, things of that nature, and it shows you the current building's orientation. We ultimately will end up with 4 fields versus the 3 we currently have. The next part of it, and and I won't perseverate on it because I want to drive this by your questions, and these might not be your questions, but community questions. There have been a lot about what does this mean about these clusters of classrooms? What do you mean by that? And really what we mean by that is right now we have hallways of classrooms. And really the way that these will be set up is there'll be clusters of classrooms for collaboration. Ideally, our hallways are set up primarily so that there is a row of math teachers, a row of English teachers, a row of science teachers. It's not the most progressive way of providing education and collaboration. These clusters make it possible that you can actually have a science, a math, an English, a social studies teacher, special education support in a cluster together collaborating. You could do it many other ways. There's just a lot more possibility than these rows of classrooms. These are more student-centered kind of environments. And they were driven by the educational planning sessions. You will see, right now at Wacona, there's 1 science lab. And as you know, we have many more science teachers than that, and science programming is some of our most integral programming to prepare our students. This does have 5 science labs, which is what the current educational model at the state level would recommend. So we would have that possibility here. The second diagram kind of shows you how it would be set up. Again, there's some safety features to this. There's some logistical features to this. There's some reality features that we are educating students now. In 2019, we were not educating when this building was built, or even 25, 30 years ago, and we now have many different options to provide for students with mental health needs, with needs in special education, such as occupational therapy, physical therapy. But as you'll see, all of the classrooms are in the second half of the building. So the first half of the building can be closed in the event of a need to do so, whether it's simply for a community event, whether there's a security concern, whatever the need is, that part of the building can be closed where the student learning is taking place and the students are spending the vast majority of their day. We don't currently at Wacona have spaces specifically that are appropriate in nature for special education services, for mental health services, for those kinds of needs that our students present with that are appropriate for privacy concerns and for the services, and this does include that. Our current gymnasium is undersized, so according to the MSBA size, this would bring it up to size. Our current classrooms are as well, so when you say there's an increased overall size square footage wise, yes, that's accurate. There's several different things. I talked about the 5 science labs. Our classrooms themselves are undersized by about 100 square feet. Additionally, our gymnasium is undersized. Those kinds of things. The footprint is smaller because it's a 2-story building. We currently have a 1, but the overall size. And you will see that a lot went into the thought as to where these things were to make them accessible when needed and not accessible when not needed, and to give certain opportunities for spaces that we've been in need of for some time. Again, you see a little bit more in detail of the first and second floor of the building. When we use the term learning commons, that really right now is the term that's being used for libraries, media centers. It's that kind of an environment, but it's used with more frequency and fluidity than the library, certainly that I experienced when I was in high school. So again, more visions of these kinds of spaces for you to be able to look at. There's a lot in color online as well to take a closer look at, and we can go back and dive more into them. Again, I think you've heard a lot about the benefits for students. Those are some of the highlights that you've probably heard people talking about. Really being able to meet the needs of the students with the building without constantly trying to work around it. If you spent any time at Wacona, you'll often notice our physics classroom spends far more time in the hallway than in the classroom. They have a classroom that is literally set up in a stadium style, like you come in, you lecture. That's not ideal for a physics classroom. We want students engaged in hands-on learning. So they have to leave the classroom and work around it. We have things like physical therapy that are constantly trying to find spaces to work with students, finding private areas to meet with students for confidential kinds of social skills groups. Meetings around trauma or emotional issues is a significant challenge in that building. So there's a feeling right now that there's a lot of effort that goes into working around the building. This is a building that facilitates the work. But I think you've heard a lot about that, but we will certainly go back based on your questions. Again, this is a breakdown of all of the features of a LEED Silver building that result in a higher energy efficiency than the current building, which I anticipate you're not surprised by given the age of the current building and the requirements around LEED Silver. So it kind of goes through all of the different things that we have to make sure are in place to get that designation from the MSBA. The budget for the building, this number, and I know there's going to be a lot of questions around the finances. We're at the finance committee. That certainly makes sense. This number right here, though, you might say that's not the number we're voting on April 6th. You're absolutely right. It includes the feasibility costs. So this is the total project. You've already approved the $850,000 for feasibility. The actual number that we are voting on April 6th is this $72 million minus $850, which is $71,107. It does show you here the breakdown of the costs and what the MSBA grant comes forward with. Our current reimbursement rate, which is primarily the base reimbursement rate due to the socioeconomic factors in the town. So MSBA looks at where each town, city is eligible based on property values, socioeconomic factors in the town. You may have heard the most you can get is 80%, that's Pittsfield. So ours was somewhere around 54% to start, but then there are what they call incentive points. So one of the examples is the maintenance records and the maintenance over the length of time Wacona has been in operation have been maintained up to the MSBA standards. Largely we had a very long-standing custodian at Wacona, many of you know, Mike Daniels. They have done a very good job of taking care of that building and keeping it up to speed with where it needs to be. So we were awarded additional reimbursement points as a result of that, which upped our reimbursement. Some of the other factors around upping our reimbursement got it to a number of 59%. So we're now at a 59% reimbursement rate.
The two other factors were we received an additional point because the committee voted to use the method of construction manager at risk. There's two ways to do these sorts of projects. The first one is design, bid, and build, and that's the way it's probably always been in the past. But there's been, over the last probably 10 to 20 years, a move towards construction manager at risk. You bring the construction manager on early on. They're part of the process from the get-go. There's less change orders because of that, and they're part of the team. And because we opted to do that, we received another additional incentive point. We did also receive 2 incentive points for the LEED Silver designation.
So our base,
Which is the energy efficiency designation.
So that's how when you're saying, wait a minute, I thought you'd heard about 54%. And now you're at 54% reimbursement. Now you're hearing this number of 59%. That is firm now. There's not going to, additional at this point. That's where our reimbursement is. The additional piece of it as well that you may have heard of, in addition to the responsibility on the part of the town. So even if you're found to be eligible for the most, you're at 80%. Your town's going to be responsible for 20. In our case, we're at 59.4. The towns are going to be responsible for that balance. Within that number that you're seeing of town responsibility, there are some ineligible costs, and there's been some conversation around this. There's a form called the 3011 form. It's an extensive form, goes into extensive detail. It is in the artifact section of the school website on the MSBA. What I will highlight though is in those ineligible costs. So we're really looking right now at ineligible costs around $18 million or so that the MSBA does not reimburse. The most important thing to be aware of is the MSBA sets a construction per square foot cost. it is a decent amount below what the average cost of construction is statewide. So right there, they set a cost of 330 square feet, $330 per square foot for construction. The average square footage cost for construction right now is $485. That difference right there, and that's every community, every project, it's conversation at the state level. That difference right there is $16,330.64.
It's about 15 million, the auditorium is a
I'm
little
sorry.
bit bigger, so that's part of it as well. The MSBA will reimburse for a certain size auditorium, which I believe holds 2/3 of the student body. I
Yes.
think that's their formula.
Yes.
The building committee thought that it would be too small and that the auditorium needed to at least be the same size as it is currently. And that's what the building committee went with, and there is additional cost to that because the excess is not reimbursable.
So just when you think about it though, at that number, the vast majority of it is the difference in that construction cost per square foot. The next biggest cost is the auditorium. There was a lot of conversation that we're asking the community for this kind of investment, and now the auditorium is going to be less available than it currently is. And if you know the Wacona Auditorium, you spent time there, it is used pretty significantly by our community. The other one, just to kind of be aware of, is that the MSBA will only reimburse for 8% of site work. That's things like parking, landscaping, things of that nature. They do reimburse for demolition of the building. They do not reimburse, however, for any asbestos abatement, and we have had to budget some of that. But again, vast majority of it, 16 million plus of the 18 million, is the construction cost and the auditorium, and the auditorium is a small figure within that. Yeah, no, please.
So to clarify on the site amount that is reimbursable, the MSBA will only reimburse 8% of the total building cost. So the total building cost is about 40-point-something million, and anything in excess of that is not reimbursable, and that ends up being about 1.5 million at this point. That's not reimbursable for site costs.
So that we're throwing a lot of information at you, but we don't know necessarily if that is answering your question. So there's certain groups that want to talk extensively about one thing versus the other. At least that gave you the overview, and then we can kind of, with Mr. Locatell and Dr. Kraft-Reese, dive into specific answers.
We could, if you'd like, if you had, well, if you'd like, we can go ahead and quiz. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
I guess just still on that topic, you were just talking about the reimbursables and the 485 a square foot versus the 330. Sounds like there are a number of items that you mentioned in there, that $18 million that we're not looking to provide, or they're not looking to provide any assistance. Can we go anywhere else to look for assistance, like the abatements? Is there grants or anything available that would be outside of the MSBA that we could look at to try to save money there?
What typically happens when you do this, and I would have to confirm that this is still the case, if you do that with some external grants, the grant from the MSBA is then reduced. That's the way that they used to do it, and I do believe it's the way they still do, but I'd have to confirm that.
Same with the site work, if there's anything else available outside that to try to save the...
Yes, and we will be applying for rebates for some of the, infrastructure.
Yeah.
That will not affect the grant that we're receiving from the MSBA. So we will be applying for, Eversource has rebates, Berkshire Gas has rebates. We'll be doing all of that, and we'll be able to get and keep that rebate money, but other grants, I believe, would reduce the grant amount.
Thank you. Regarding the project cost, so if you're getting halfway through the project and you realize you're running into some overrun somewhere along the line, is there a mechanism in place to, cap that total cost to the towns at a certain amount?
Yes, the total cost cannot be higher than 72.7 million. It can't go higher. This is a budget. So when the budget is voted in by the taxpayers, if it is, that is the maximum amount that we will be able to expend. We can't go over it. We certainly can come under, and we will if we can. We'll find areas as we move along of, hopefully some cost-cutting areas, but we cannot go over that 72 million, that's it.
We do have contingency built in for that capacity.
And escalation for construction costs
Yep.
as well, because they increase exorbitantly year over year.
And you had mentioned as a project manager, obviously that's going to be working with you on the whole project. So if he or she comes up to you and basically says, we've spent more on X, Y, Z, we're running into an issue, I'm sure you'll be probably offering you some options as to where we may be able to reduce costs further on in the project.
Yes.
Will they be coming to your committee, or is there another group that will be looking to work with the project manager, or how that?
Generally, that's the building committee that answers that question. What will you reduce in order to fill in that gap?
Okay.
And we have had that relationship with them throughout feasibility. We're looking at every single invoice with them, sometimes questioning things, with the design team as well, just to make sure, and then looking at the contingency line as well throughout the process. But no, we have had that relationship in place now for a while, for a couple of years.
Thank you.
At the end of the next presentation, we're going to show the capital projects that we have right now. And if you add to that Craneville that doesn't show up any longer, and I think there's one other, ask what of those have exceeded their costs? Where have we had to go back to the voters in Central Berkshire, and it's never happened? Well, I'm sorry, there is one instance that I was going to quiz you guys. Do you know what the incident is? The only time, do you know what it is?
It was one of two, I believe.
The only time, to my recollection, that's happened was a case where we renovated instead of built new, and that was Beckett, Washington, where they had a problem with the well that they hadn't anticipated. But other than that, and there have been a lot of them. I mean, you see the list that we have, and there are a lot that have already been paid for. It hasn't been a problem.
I had a question. If we, so we go to a vote, and what's the contingency plan if it's a no vote?
So it's really important to remember, I think, because this has been maybe overblown in what it actually is. So if there is a no vote, we have 120 days to bring the exact same vote with the exact same budget to the voters. So the only really benefit is that you're hoping more people would come out in favor than did. There's no change, there's no opportunity for dialogue around the scope of the project or the budget. And within those 120 days, we'd have to make a decision to bring that back forward to the voters and to do the exact same thing again, make one more effort. After that 120 days, our participation in the MSBA program would end. So throughout the whole process, there have been deadlines. If you aren't able to meet this by then, your participation would end. We do know we have neighbors who are in that situation, who did go through a project and ultimately it did not pass. Your time with the MSBA is over, and any future interaction with them would be based on applying and them actually inviting you back in.
So then what's the plan if it's two
Right.
no's?
So if the plan is 2 no's, and Ms. Falkowski can talk about some of the details of the numbers, is we do have immediate needs in that building that would absolutely need to be addressed through capital projects.
Yes, there is part of the, and this is for a full base repair of the building, not an educational improvement to the building. A base repair of the building without educational improvements is about 45.6 million. Now, that is to repair the whole building. There are parts of it that have to be done sooner than later. The roof, the HVAC, that is 9 million. The building envelope, the doors, windows, and the walls, that's another 8 million. So there's a lot that will have to be coming forward, and to be honest, we would have to look at that building, have someone come in and look at the building again to say this is what needs to be done now. This can wait, or it all needs to be done now. We don't, the total is 45.6 million with contingencies. And contingencies, as Mr. Locatell spoke to, are much higher on a renovation than they would be on a new build, because you're building new. You're not uncovering things that you don't know about in a renovation.
Now, I just did a little research. This accelerated repair program, there's grants available. for roofs, HVAC, windows, boilers. Has that been explored at all? They say for 2019, there is approximately $50 million in grants.
So we're in one program, so we can't be in another one at the same time, but you are right, if they do continue, they look at needs every year, and if they do continue to offer that, could we apply for that? Yes, we could. What our design team has advised us and our project manager, and from talking to others who have been in this situation, when they have identified a building as in need of full repair, you're not their favorite candidate for these accelerated repairs. Accelerated repairs, I lived through accelerated repairs of all of the roofs in buildings that did not need full repair. Certainly were up to standard educationally and did not have the list that we have, but did need a roof repaired or did need windows or whatnot. So the answer is yes. After our participation in this program ended, could we apply? Yes. The likelihood of us being invited in, we cannot speak to with confidence. And you can.
And you would have to think of it this way, the building's been flagged, for lack of a better word, as a full repair building. The MSBA is not going to take the tax dollars and put it into a building that won't withstand the life of a roof or the life of a window. So they will most likely, probably, not approve this project.
But before, when this whole building project got started, no one kind of looked at this first?
We did. We look at
And-
that every year. We look at our buildings every year and see
But
which
not
ones
enough
empty.
to know whether they, I mean, do you have to actually go through the whole process to find out if they would reimburse you with any of these grants?
Yeah.
Or one or the
So-
other. So
yeah.
a path was chosen 10 years ago, that this was a building that needed full repair, and that we had to get on this process to ultimately get to where we needed to be for the students, for the community. And we gotta go one path or the other, because like Ms. Falkowski said, it does sound like you're telling two different stories. You say, hey, our building's doing okay, we just need a new roof, everything else will withstand the life of it, versus our building is not meeting the educational needs and has a list of needs. You're absolutely right, about 10 years ago, before our time, and we've continued, superintendents and the school committee endorsing have submitted to this program.
So you mentioned that you'd have to go through, so say if it doesn't pass the voters on either opportunity, and then you're looking at those repairs, the building assessment that was previously done, that would probably give you a great starting point as to what needs repair, so it's just a matter of going through and trying to determine the life expectancy of what you've got to prioritize the repairs or the replacements.
And the total would be 45.6 million in today's dollars. It'll escalate as the years go on.
And the only other thing to think about is that sometimes you'd say, okay, we'll do this year, this next year. Certain things trigger a requirement to do the next, so if you spend a certain amount of money, you have to bring Title IIA up to code. So there's some things that doing this requires that you do this, because if you're investing this much, you need to bring ADA compliance up and up to code. So it might not be as linear as we would decide.
I call that the Band-Aid approach. Every year, in theory, we'd be coming to you with something else, and we're not talking $100,000 issues. The roof is $3 million, the heating HVAC is $6 million. So we'd be coming to you and in fact, you can see on the last slide that Melissa will show, there are two of those items already that we felt we had to incorporate into the school was done. Well, gee, if we had done the new building, we wouldn't have had to do that. And they'll get bigger and bigger as we expand.
I had a question about the reimbursement rate. I know you said Pittsfield was about 80%. So when they figure it out, are they only taking Dalton because that's where the school is, or they take all our 7 towns to figure that out? Because it's socioeconomic, right, that they're basing it on. So is it just the one town or all?
I would assume like the region.
Yeah, we're set as school districts in their system, but let me answer that question for you specifically. We're listed, they look at us as school districts, and we're looked at as Central Berkshire, but let me get that for you specifically to make sure that we're accurate.
I know you mentioned that, sorry.
I do have one rather interesting question about this. I did a little research concerning concerning the population of this town, and kind of looks like the same trend is taking place throughout the district. As we went from 7,300 people in the town of Dalton in 1990 to 6,350 people in 2019. It's 1,000 people that we've lost in the town. And the trend is pretty steady to drop. And my concerns are that as this trend heads in that direction, the cost of this school is going to continue to escalate. You talk about the cost of making repairs to escalate. The cost of doing the school is going to escalate per person, per capita, whatever. It doesn't. It's all the same people that are here, and I'm a little concerned. I am part of the real estate industry, and I'm a little concerned about the tax impact on people. Some of the two first things they look at when they prepare to purchase a home in Dalton and many other towns, and I've actually looked at houses myself in Florida, and the first things we look at are the schools and how much are the taxes on the house. And that's the whole tax price. That's not just not the price per thousand. We're looking at the whole tax. And I'm just curious if during this process, this lengthy process that you've gone through, and just to be honest with you, I've been through the process. To be honest with you, it was about 12 years ago I went through the process, and I guess has this downward trend been kind of looked at through this whole process? Because we built a beautiful school over at Nessicus, and it's certainly not filled to capacity. I think it's kind of hovering around 50%, isn't it? I don't. You would know better than I on that number. But have we put any thought into that side of this equation of building something new?
And I think we probably all have different answers. I mean, I will tell you that we are, and we continue to be projected to, as far as the communities in Berkshire County, have the second largest high school system in the county. Obviously, Pittsfield and Taconic are the two larger high schools, but our high school is the second largest community. And I do think that is certainly worthy of providing a long-term option for our students. Our class size does dip when we get to our kindergarten levels. We'll start to bring in class sizes of 100 around that time, absent of our school choice. That is without we have a fairly high school choice enrollment, specifically at Wacona. We have well over 70 students currently there for school choice. The building is sized for 460. That is a building being built at 80% capacity though. The school certainly can be run at 100% capacity. And that is a number that is smaller than our current population, which is at 530, and certainly will be able to be implemented when the building opens and still have some room for school choice. But I think that mine is always an educational focus, as well as, you talk about real estate as a parent, like thinking about what do I want? I want to make sure we have a strong educational system for the children who are not going to see a school for 10 years. And I do believe that as a community, we absolutely need to have a strong high school option, because we currently do. We just don't have a facility that's going to continue to facilitate the quality of education we're capable of providing. So I do believe that we look at enrollment all the time. It's part of the figure that MSBA approved, but we have a high school population that will be present in this community for many, many years to come. As well as we attract people from around the community, and I don't know what that will do if we had a new building. Wacona is a difficult building to make a 21st century learning environment, and they do everything in their power to find a way and have a good school choice population. What that will mean when they have a new facility, I don't know, but I think it can only be a positive. But what are your thoughts? Or I know Mr. Locatell has a lot of...
Well, MSBA shares the same concerns that you do. I mean, they're putting $30 million into the project. So they look very carefully at the enrollment and the enrollment decline. They don't want to overbuild, as has happened in some instances. This is sized appropriately, the new project. As far as the dollars per student, yeah, if you have 530 and it goes to 450, yeah, the dollars per student is increased, but what the town pays, or I'm sorry, what the 7 towns pay is the same, you know, regardless of what the enrollment is. If that's what you were getting to.
That's kind of part of it. That's a piece of the question. The concern when it comes to that is the value of this town. Looking at the big picture and what this town is valued at. And if we have a decreasing population and things of that nature, my concern lies with, as we had that, for instance, houses come onto the market, and the prices of those houses, if people are looking at the cost of what it's gonna, for instance, it runs right around $400 a month right now for the average house, just for their taxes. That's what it's running at. And when people are looking at purchasing a home, especially a $200,000 house, which is affordable, my concern lies with if we start going into the $600, $500 and $600 a month range. Now that's a substantial amount of money, and therein lies the concern is how do we substantiate this? And when we look at the long range view of this town, how are we going to be able to sustain it? And we actually, the town itself has some rather large infrastructure issues coming. We actually have been getting some more solid numbers on those, so we have to be aware of those. So I'm struggling with this because of that, and it's primarily because I am also involved in the real estate industry. I know of people that have purchased in the town, and they look at their tax bill and they say, "Oh my God, why?" And they're looking at the finance committee chair, and they're asking a question of, "Why are the taxes so expensive in this town?" That's exactly the question I get.
I do think though that it is.
And how do I answer that?
There's a competing concern of we're gonna have an educational opportunity in my community for my child of 5, 6, 7-year-olds. And I do think if all voices are incredibly important and you hear a lot of them, but there is a large group of the Friends for Wacona that are families that are going to have a financial burden as a result of this. But the priority of having a strong high school in their community long term is that big of a priority. And I do know, looking at real estate, you said there's 2 things, and those 2 things often do go hand in hand. I want a strong educational system with facilities that will support it into the future. The taxes are gonna be there. I mean, we're surrounded by communities that have recently built schools, and if they haven't, they're scrambling to figure out what they'll do. We've seen what not having a school in a community has quite an impact as well. So I think it is definitely a hand-in-hand kind of thing for families with children they want to educate long-term in our community. And the question around the finances is absolutely the one that we've been playing with, but also, do we have a viable educational system long-term to run a high school that can give an excellent education in this community? Absolutely. Do we have the population to do so with, as we're projected right now? Yes, we do. We need the facility, but we have the population. We're never going to be a huge high school statewide, but plenty of very successful high schools throughout the state run between 400 and 600 kids. And we plan to be one of them. So I certainly respect both sides of the coin, but I do think that looking for houses, I want to hear that they have a solid educational system and a good plan in my community. I know that's going to come with a cost. And the other piece of it, but the cost is not this or nothing. Unfortunately, regardless, someone's going to be paying a cost. This is an option for a.
I know that issue too well.
But that's where I want to kind of come in.
You've got 5 people sitting here. Unfortunately, we were unable to have Mike Kaufman here this evening, but you've got 5 people that are very, very concerned about the well-being of this entire town.
Yeah. And it's a definite catch-22 if you want a good school to bring people in. But when I look at the community assessments, why am I going to move to Dalton when I can go up the street and live in Hinsdale and pay about half? So is that just going to kill this town? They can say, I can live in Hinsdale, Peru, Beckett, pay not anywhere near these taxes. and I've got that same school. So that's what, being on this committee, that's what I really struggle with. We have that huge sewer bill coming. I guess I would have liked to see, and maybe you did, but if Nesicus is truly at 50% capacity, is there no way that we can incorporate some of the high school into that and take some of Nesicus kids, put them in the elementary schools? I think with the way our finances are right now, we really need to think out of the box here. And I just don't know if anyone has even looked at that. Could we just add on to Nesicus where you get those kinds of classrooms?
I mean, what I can answer, and I don't know if others want to answer differently, the question you're asking is what grade level configurations looked at. They were.
Because Nesicus is 20 years old.
They were.
What's gonna happen? We've gotta maintain that too. What's gonna come up
And
with
are there
that?
other options with Nesicus as well, given our responsibilities at the elementary level? Were all of those, yes, the grade level configurations, because we know around the state, I mean, they just built a K-12 school at some place in the state. There's all kinds of grade level configurations. We did look at that early on in the process extensively, what kind of a grade level configuration. Not to say there can't be flexibility long term, but this building was brought forth as a 9-12 project.
But it's not only that, you've also got Craneville. My whole thing is, have you ever, and I'm sorry, but it was mentioned that there was no maintaining of the Koenig at all for any of the bigger projects. And I know you're new and and you're doing an awesome job. I can't say that you're not. You've done a great job. But you've got Craneville. When are we gonna start hearing about that? Because you know that building's gonna be up and running. Nesicus needs a new roof. I know that you've probably set money aside in the budget to handle that. These are things that are coming up. You're talking about your schooling structure, you know, teaching the children. God bless you, thank you. But with it comes a huge price, and that's the buildings. And if you haven't taken care of them over 60 years, 50 years, 20 years, and then you come to the towns and say, oh, guess what? We got an issue. How are we supposed to feel?
So
And that's what's very difficult for us, because I understand where you're coming from, but when we, as a finance committee on any towns, have to sit here and say, oh my God, and I struggle with this. I haven't been able to sleep, that's how bad I've been struggling with it. Because I understand your point, but I don't understand why nobody has taken care of these schools over all this year.
the only thing I do want to
That's
say.
unfair, I mean, come on.
Maintenance
Is it?
Well,
Yeah.
maintenance is different. I
Yeah.
do want to say, we've had long-term custodians in each of our buildings who work so hard. And the Wacona custodian was basically, the work done gave us money back, significant amounts. I mean, those percentage points are not small dollar figures. Again, capital projects done over the years, over the past 60 years, that I can't speak to. But day-to-day maintenance, I mean, you can, because you've approved them, Mr. Locatelli can, the school committee can, because capital projects in my time are all I can speak to. But day-to-day maintenance of these buildings, those custodial staff work hard, and the rewards that we have been given as a result of the work that I attribute to Mike Daniels and the other head custodians that have come before him, paid us back in dividends. So maintenance of the building, day-to-day maintenance, I would adamantly disagree. The principals walk those buildings weekly with their head custodians, our buildings and ground managers monthly, myself, Melissa, head custodians multiple times. I think we're talking different terms. I just want to be fair for our
Absolutely, and I don't
maintenance is
disagree
different.
with that at all. I will clarify myself on that and say, absolutely. And I've met these people, and they have done an awesome job. But it's the huge capital expenditures. Where are the 5-year plans for these buildings? Do we have 5-year plans for these buildings that we can come back to and say, hey, you know, what are we gonna do?
We do.
I mean, this is so difficult on both sides of the coin. So, you know, I commend you for such an awesome job, for everybody's hard work in doing this, and it really does. It boils down to the vote. But at the end of the day, we as a committee, we gotta figure it out. And it's gonna be hard for us. I can't, either side, it's gonna be hard for us.
You did ask, and I think we can speak a little bit to the other buildings. We do have 5-year plans for them. We do have property equipment and improvement plans. We are constantly looking at them, constantly walking them with a bigger eye around them. You are right, the Nessicus roof is a concern for us. It's our primary concern. We have incrementally been replacing parts of it. That's part of something we're looking at. They're really at the other buildings right now. Again, I mean, I don't want to say with certainty like I wouldn't with my own home. But do we have huge things on the horizon in the other buildings? We do not. We do not, and I think we could talk more extensively to that, show you those kinds of plans for any kind of reassurance, and what the plan is. The Nessicus roof is definitely the big ticket one that you've been tracking closely.
And the Nessicus roof would be eligible for the accelerated repair program, not the core program. The building itself was just done, as you said, 20 years ago. The roof, though, would qualify, and we would apply for, when we got to that point, the accelerated repair, which would be the 54.79% that we see today. Should it hold through the years, it may go up, it may go down a little, but it would be in that ballpark. And we would apply
They're the
for
perfect
those
candidate.
funds. And it's a quick process with the accelerated repair. A few years ago, before Berkshire Trail was closed, we went through the process there, but the vote failed, so we didn't go any further. But it's quick. They come out, they look at it, they approve it. You get in the cycle, you go out to bid, and it's completed over the summer prior to the start of the next school year. So that would be something we would look at. So the total cost of the roof, should it be accepted into the accelerated repair, would not be on the taxpayers. We would receive tax money from the state.
Bill mentioned a program that he was on, 12 years ago, you're saying?
Yeah, 12.
So yeah, we could have we could have done some of these things at that time, and it was lots of millions of dollars, and we didn't even try. You know, it's not like there's money sitting around for these types of changes. Windows, walls that are really windows, the heating, ventilating, so forth. The parking lot thing. What happens is you have to come to the towns, and you know the school committee thinks about that. Yeah, we know this has to be done. Are we willing to go to the town for the very same reason that we're talking about today?
Yeah, but you never approach the towns.
Sometimes,
So why?
a lot of
I guess
times, things do
I guess
get
the
voted
question-
down.
I guess the question screams asking is, why, I know for a fact that there was indeed a discussion about the driveway situation in front of that
Oh,
building.
okay, let's not get into individual
What I
things.
don't
No, no, no,
understand
no.
is
But they're,
it's-
but they're millions of dollars.
The point being is that there were discussions about those various things that are coming into issue today. And I just don't, I guess I don't understand why, and the concern lies with, is it gonna happen again, I guess is the question. It's, and I think that's partly where it's coming from, is, you know, it seems to us that we're, or it seems to me, that we're in this kind of a spiral that we go and we fix, we dump a bunch of money into a building, whichever one, we've got a bunch of them. But it seems like we go and put a whole bunch of money over here, we get that all done, and then all of a sudden we've got to go and build them. Now we've got to dump a whole bunch of money into this building. Now, because we're into this big building that we need to do, I guess the question is, what projects are going to be lost with relationship to the Beckett and Watch, or Beckett, Kittredge, Nessicus, all the other buildings? I guess the question is it going to hurt those buildings as well?
No.
And it's, I'm trying to think of it on a more of a global
No, it's-
scenario than just Dalton. And Dalton is, we're going to take the biggest hit. There's no denying that.
It's a fair question, but the answer is no. Those are buildings that facilitate instruction. I mean, most buildings, the age of Laconia, if you walk into them, I walked into one not that long ago, the first thing out of their mouth was, we're in the MSBA project we're looking at. Laconia, we're looking at a project here, because the building does not look like it's just being used to, it can't be used to provide education. Now, I mean, Wacona was built in a time that there were no female sports teams. There were no kids with disabilities in the building. The amount of needs is well beyond roofs and boilers. We don't have locker room facilities for girls. We may have played sports, we were not mandated to provide you the opportunities. So we have done a lot of working around things. We do not have equal facilities for boys and girls. We have done things to work around it, but we are not set up the way that a high school that is set up for Title IX is, or Title II is. We're just not. You might have appreciated the Mickey Mousing we've done to make things work, but we are not in a building that was built with a Title IX or a Title II perspective.
How often does this educational change go?
Yeah.
I mean,
When-
what's
when-
the
when did Title
spiral?
IX come about?
When's, you talk about your school models.
Yeah.
How often do those change that you might know of? Is it every 20 years? Is it every 10 years? I mean, how many models can fit into a building? Like, do you know what I'm
I
trying
do.
to say?
I think there's two. I think there's. It's a
do you know
really
what I
good
mean?
question. Yeah, there's two categories. There were massive law changes. Not that long ago. How much more can we go? I mean, there have been changes, yes, with rights around transgender and LGBTQ. We need to have gender-neutral bathrooms. Those are minor. But when they rolled out Title IIA and they rolled out IDEA and special education, those are massive changes that you really needed to make some massive changes to meet. I mean, and not to mention they rolled them out slow. First, you're educating students with varying needs in your building, and then and you're not educating them in rooms a fourth the size in the basement. You're educating them in the same size classroom. So I think the legal changes are far more costly and substantial, and in my viewpoint, which is only as good as your crystal ball, are there massive more legal changes coming down the pike on the level of Title IX and Title IIA? I hope there's no one we're doing that to anymore, the way we did it to women and individuals with disabilities. I mean, who are we leaving out at this level that we're gonna need massive civil rights changes around? That's a huge piece for us. Title IX, Title IIA, there's been minor things with gender we can work with minimal things. The second one, though, is really the educational. There has been, and somewhat because of that, because we are educating students with a range of needs. We're not educating in a classroom just the average student, whatever that mythical thing is. So that teach to a group, you're gonna sit and I'm gonna lecture law school style, just doesn't work because who am I lecturing to? That big shift started to happen, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years. And I do think that has really been the sustainable shift. These changes make it more functional and doable, but the thing I like that yes, these have flexible furniture and science and math can coordinate. We started hearing STEM, humanities, instead of science, math. You do science versus it's done to you, 10, 15 years ago? We started hearing more about that. That's incredibly important. But like I said, we've got a physics classroom trying to make that work in the hallway. What I'm more concerned about is that right here, I have students with varying abilities all together in equal-sized classrooms. I have spaces for students who have mental health needs. I don't have to provide physical therapy in the hall. That piece of it is far more costly and far more difficult to do, even Mickey Mousing it together well. So I think there's two buckets. Massive changes in education. We're going to see extensive extension of STEM, humanities, hands-on, doing science versus having it done to you, collaboration. Don't lecture at kids, have them in groups working. It's going to get more and more on that path, but that path has been set. And I think it is two big buckets of ways of teaching, lecture and this one. And I was maybe on the tail end of lecture, and most of us experienced that, and now it's on this. But I think it is going to be in place. How long do we deal with lecture? Long time. So it could be 50 years, 60 years.
And will that filter down into the elementary grades as well? That
Yeah,
same
it
structure
has,
in the
more so.
fall?
I'd say more so there. It's more so there
More
than,
schools.
it's more so in the elementary.
Flexible seating
Oh,
and
yeah.
furniture.
Yeah, the 3 elementary schools are fit well for what we need.
Okay, so those are fit for the next 20 years possibly, kind of?
We've been purchasing flexible furniture so that there's more collaborative space for the students who are learning to develop their critical thinking skills. And so it's not so much the buildings that are preventing that, it's the furniture, and we've been replacing it through the operating budget.
I have one question. You talk about the diversity of the student population, and part of that diversity are students that do well in a vocational education setting. Did you look at that for this new school building at all?
So I guess we could talk about that in two components. Did we look at being a vocational school?
No, so not a vocational school, but offering to our students vocational education.
So similar to so we do have some programming right now that we are looking at what will meet the needs of the kids as we go forward. So you do know that we have an engineering program, we have an automotive program. Those are being updated, but there will be spaces for those. So our engineering program is part of that, which is largely driven by our engineering and teacher at the high school. We do have a retirement coming up in one of the other programs, and we need to look at what students are looking for and what we'll be able to do. But that's not largely driven by the building. So for lack of better terms, what limited vocational we offer, because we are not McCann, we are not Smith, and we are not Taconic. We will continue to have offerings, but we are not honestly a vocational school. I did look at, we do have offerings, we do need to have opportunities for kids that they are interested. We did look at, just out of curiosity, our numbers right now, just to kind of have that piece of it. We have the vast majority, all but 2 of our vocational kids are at McCann and Smith. In pretty specialized programs that we're not looking to compete with. We have about 58 students out at vocational. Again, 56 of them are at McCann and Smith in specialized programs. We have about 75 kids coming to us by choice. So we gotta follow what our demand is. More kids come to us because of who we are and what we offer than leave us. And those who are leaving us are going to some specialized programs at McCann and Smith. I don't know if that didn't answer though.
Well, so if you had some other vocational programs, like culinary, let's say, just culinary, you might draw more kids in. And so not only do we have, I guess I just want to per se that the town right now is spending almost $600,000 for 24 students to go to voc ed. And I just was curious if you looked at keeping those students in. There are some programs you won't be able to provide, but there are other programs that, I'm just using culinary as one of them, that you might grow voc ed students into your community, and then there's more revenue right there. You don't get the school choice revenue that the schools get for voc ed, and that's double the amount. So if you were, in this new building that you want to build, I wish somebody would have thought of maybe entertaining some more vocational educational programs, so that might have helped to reduce the cost of a building for a town.
It's definitely fair to continue to look at, especially the unknown of what will happen with Taconic. We have not seen an uptick in interest at this point. What we are seeing when we do a close analysis at Smith and McCann are pretty specialized programs beyond what we think we could staff or do well for those students. Those are some pretty highly specialized award-winning programs at the state level, in all fairness to what they do in those programs. Right now, at this snapshot in time, when we're building for our population, we did not see that need or that demand compared to what the demand is for the kids who want to come here. We're going to have a population at 80% of 460 that we're going to easily meet on our own. And then to go beyond that, to even get at 100% capacity, we have enough school choice demand from the kids who are coming here for what we have. But again, right now, in this snapshot in time where our kids are primarily going and what they're looking at is one thing. I don't know, and I don't have a crystal ball to predict, will Taconic change that dynamic, and then would that conversation need to be looked at? But right now, our analysis was that did not make sense for what the needs of the community and the students were.
Right. As far as Taconic goes, that cost for voc ed is the same at all 3 schools. So, there's only...
The state changed that a few years
Right,
ago.
I know.
Most are very level.
Not many people are going to Pittsfield or Taconic. 3, I think, in this new year coming up.
Yeah, they're really looking at it.
And I did have one more question, going back to the vote. I'm sorry to switch gears like that, but, so we talked about what happens if it's a no vote, but what constitutes a no vote? 7 different communities are going to the polls. What would make it be a no vote?
It's a majority of the popular vote.
Of all the towns together or one town? Say one town.
It's as if we're all one town.
Okay, so
It's not by
If-
town.
it's however many votes are no? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The majority vote yes.
No or yes, right?
Yeah, and it ties no, right?
I would assume so.
Understanding. But yeah, one more
Because-
vote.
Yeah,
It's like
'cause I'm-
popular vote in the presidency, yeah.
I thought the rules were different. Did that change? I
Well-
thought it was,
The Massachusetts general law allows us to do it by popular vote.
Okay.
That's what we did with the feasibility study, and that's what most regionals are doing now.
okay.
The regional agreement calls for something else by town, but we can do it either way, and we chose to do it by popular vote,
Okay.
which
Fair.
it, where we sit, yes, it is fair.
It is fair, for sure.
All right. Are we all set with questions?
Thank you so very
Thank-
much.
thank you very much for
It
your
is
time.
very difficult. I get it.
Thank you. And-
But
Considering
no.
what we have on our plate for this evening, we're probably gonna have a motion maybe tomorrow night, if we have time tomorrow night to take a look at it. We'll let you know what the committee thinks of the proposal. It's a very good proposal. Thank you very much for all of your work. It's been pretty well looked at.
We have an operating budget.
Well, that was the next
We
one.
do
We
not-
dismissed.
No, I wanted to move on. We have to go get Jeff, Jeff has to come back.
Oh, he's in the hall.
Here- Yes, we're all,
Thank
we're all
you very
set.
much.
Yeah,
And
so
reach
we're all
out
set.
if
Thank
more
you. And
questions or
now we're
information.
now we're on to the operating
I was like,
budget.
I didn't think we were done. But if you say so.
Well, no, I kinda wanna move this along.
We'll still keep giving you the pain here.
It'll be quicker. This is a good one. We hope
No,
you're.
I've already seen your budget, so it's pretty,
Yeah, I mean,
it's a pretty good budget. I don't, it came in my golden numbers, it came in at.
Good number, good number. Thank you. So we're handing this out. This is our, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. White.
Just for clarification, when will the committee vote on this?
Well, we've kinda got a lot to get done.
Well, I
So
realize that.
I'm probably later tomorrow evening. Will probably be
Your other
when I-
meeting.
Yeah, it's our next meeting, yes. It'll probably be later in the evening, John, because I really need to focus on the town's budgets and get them done. And then once we're done with them, we'll have to move on. Thank you for asking, I appreciate it.
So Melissa's gonna do most of the talking when she sits down. But just to kind of give the overview, we did want to show you the comparison of where the 2018-19 budgets came in once they were finalized, as well as where the 2020 budget is at $634,846. There is a variance of $225,975. It's a 0.82% increase, so we feel it's a very, very conservative increase. I did not include all the details in this. I did not want to go down a path with the finance committee that was not their need tonight, but if you want to see the full budget, it's online. What I want to assure you in my role is that what I like about this budget is that certainly it's fiscally conservative, which Ms. Falkowski is very proud of. It still brings forward several educational objectives. We are not losing any programming. We are not losing any staffing that provide programming. You might say how? We look very closely at attrition. And when we have retirements that based on our current population, we can replace with current staff, we do that. This budget actually does include staffing increases in special education, as well as in what we call an instructional coach. So just to give you that peace of mind, sometimes you say, oh great, you've got a 0.82 increase, what did our kids lose? I would argue that they gained. I feel good about this as an educator, and Ms. Falkowski feels good about this as a finance person. So it's a nice marriage, but just to have that piece.
So Lori went over the history, and we thought that would be beneficial to show you where we've been in the past and where we are this year. And you'll notice on the bottom of that first slide on page 1, the 5-year average increase going back to 2016 has been less than 1%, 0.82%. And so we have to, at this stage of the game, we have revenue figures from the Commonwealth and the governor's budget. And we're able to plug those into the various state aid figures. So chapter 70 is a number from our actual cherry sheet. Chapter 71 is the transportation reimbursement, and we're seeing a little bit more there. I'm very conservative with this number because this number tends to change. We start at one level and we drop down to another level. So it depends on, as it moves through the budgeting process, what the Senate or the House feels about other income coming into the state, whether they can keep the level that the governor wants. So I'm a little conservative with that, and that does not match the cherry sheet, it's a little under. The last few years, we've had transportation revolving funds that we have set aside from transportation reimbursement. We're allowed to set aside the exact amount of our reimbursement to be used in the next year's budget. And this was passed a few years ago, and the school committee adopted it a few years ago because that number for transportation reimbursement is so up and down. We are never sure of the number that we'll get. We may think in December we're getting $975,000, and then in June we end up with only $800,000. So this fund was set up for regional districts to be able to plan for that rainy day, and we've been able to set that aside, and we use it to offset transportation expenses in the next year's budget. So that's the $400,000 that you see in that line item. The charter school reimbursement is, we have students who leave for charter school. We are assessed their tuitions at each of the charter schools, and we do receive a partial reimbursement. It's partial, just like the transportation, and our assessments are, we probably have about 25 students at about $18,000 to $20,000 each, and we're seeing a reimbursement of $55,000. So the assessment's much, much higher than the reimbursement that we receive. Moving down into the other revenue, we have interest income, and you do see an increase in that for fiscal year 20, and that is because we have, the majority of our funds are in MMDT, and they've been paying a very good interest rate. So we've seen a benefit to that, and we expect it to continue, so we've adjusted that estimate up for this budget. Medicaid reimbursement is held level. We're sort of in that. We can be a little bit under some years, a little bit over other years. This is a reimbursement based upon the services that we provide to students who qualify for Medicaid. We are reimbursed for a portion of the services that we provide, and that's what that fund is, and that's an operating revenue for us. Miscellaneous income, this is income that we may have a vendor send us a refund check for something. We throw it in that, it's sort of like the melting pot for different things. Yeah, and it's, it could be higher, and again, we never know. Could be higher, could be lower each year, but 5,000 is where we've kept it over the last probably 8 to 10 years at this point. And our E&D appropriation, the finance committee for the school district does give budget guidelines each year. And the budget guideline has been, if it's over a certain amount, $1 million, appropriate all but $250,000. So we leave $250,000 in the bank, so to speak, and then we appropriate the rest to offset town assessments in the next budget. So you see there's a little bit of an increase there of 11,000. So when you take the budget, add up all other sources of revenue, the one remaining pot is the town assessments, and that goes up or down depending on the revenue figures and the size of the budget. So we're seeing an increase in town assessments this year of $138,580, which is again less than 1% to the town assessments, because the budget increase and the town assessment increase aren't always the same. Well, they're never the same. They can be close some years, but they could be very different other years depending on the revenue. So you see that there's an increase of $225,975 revenues match expenditures. The next page in the first slide shows you the operating budget is not the only revenue sources that the district utilizes to operate the budget. We also have grant funds that we receive, and we have revolving funds, which are basically like checking accounts. Food service has their own account, and the food service is fully operated by the funds that they receive and the federal reimbursements that we receive. It's not offset by the operating budget, it's a fully functioning whole department that pays for itself. And so that's one of those other funds. And athletics, the dues and the gate receipts and all that pay for the refs and everything else that we need to run the games.
I think these are your enterprise funds, right? Town
Yeah,
calls
Yes,
yeah, that's what we
all that
use, we use them as an
enterprise, yes.
enterprise.
They're
fund,
being
so
called
it's-
something else now. I forget what they said they was gonna
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they can only be
So
used
it's-
for what they're collected for, so you have to,
call.
you
It's
have
sort of like
to
our
follow the right.
53E and a half revolving fund.
Oh, okay.
My head hurts.
So that totals another $2,100,000. So if you look at the chart title, it says all sources of revenue, $29,781,760. That's really what it costs to run the district. Now, some of the funds like food service may have a fund balance in them, but we, as I said, it pays for itself. We use that strictly for that. So that's what it costs, really, give or take a little bit, to run the district each year. The operating budget is in the 27 million, add another 2, you have 29. The next slide, do you have a question?
No, I was just
Commenting on how
kind of
well it's
commenting, this
presented.
is the first time I've ever seen one this well presented.
Yeah. Didn't mean to interrupt.
That's a good
Yeah.
interruption.
No, we
No, I
were, it was
appreciate
just,
that.
generally you have to go back and forth, and it's
This
like
is really nice.
almost like a card game that you're playing to try to keep track of everything. This is very well.
School finance is very confusing. There's so many buckets to it, and so many regulations, it
Yeah.
can be very
This
confusing.
Nice job,
good.
thank you.
Yeah, that's all.
The next slide is the expenditures, and I've grouped these into main areas within the operating budget. So the first line item you see there is central administration, and that would include the school committee. School committee members are not paid to be on the school committee, but they do have some expenses. We have certain things that fall under school committee, like our advertising, like our postage. That's all falling under the umbrella of school committee. There are no salaries included in that.
Legal.
Legal is also in there, thank you.
Accountant.
Superintendent, did you say what?
Accountant.
Yes, the treasurer is in there as well, thank you. So superintendent's office and the business office, that comprises the rest of the, what we call central office and the district administration. So there's an increase there because part of the increase is we have a new treasurer. And we also, the state contract for copiers has changed. It's very exciting stuff, but it's changed. And we now have to also pay for the warranties separately where it was included before. So you have a cost to lease the copier and a cost for the warranty, and it's increased. So that's in there. We're doing some improvements to our student information system so that we can allow for online registration for parents to utilize our Power School system for online registration. That's where all those costs fall. The next line item is technology, and you'll see a drop there, a big drop of $157,309. It's important to note that the district did receive rural aid funds in this year. So we reduced the amount in the technology budget by what we can purchase this year so that it decreases the assessments to the towns, basically. You have to spend the money this year. So what we're doing is taking what's needed in technology, we're using those funds, spending it this year, not needing it in the 20 budget. It's not a reduction in what we're purchasing, it's just the timing of it and the funds used. The next line item, district-wide, that's sort of another pot where everything sort of, that doesn't fall to a school or a department falls. That would be transportation, that would be charter school assessment. This budget does call for a part-time school resource officer for both the middle and the high school, through contracted services, not as an employee, but that's in that bucket too, so you see a little bit of an increase there. The transportation is a good part of it because we are in the going into the 4th year of a 5-year contract. and it's a 4% increase. We have 25 buses on the road every day, so it's a big expense to the district.
That was contracted for.
It's contracted for, yes. Instructional, this includes elementary, middle, and high instructional levels. It includes salaries, it includes supplies, it includes everything that is necessary to run those programs at each of the levels. And you see a bit of an increase there. We did have a lot of movement within the schools, some from the middle school going to the high school and such, but the net result is a $37,000 increase year over year in that area. Special education is the line item that is seeing the highest growth year over year. And I know that you can speak very well to this, but we do have increased costs with out-of-district tuitions. We are
Moving a class that we were contracting for a BCBA, it's a very high cost, it's a board certified behavioral analysis for looking at student behavior, primarily of students with disabilities. We want to bring that person on staff. It'll actually be a reduction in cost if we can do so, but it's an increase to the operating as opposed to contracting out. And like I mentioned, we did add a 4th special education teacher at Craigville to try and keep those costs out of district down by providing more in district. Statewide, people are seeing huge increases in this area. Ours is fairly moderate when you take out the BCBA. That is just a reallocation of resources and the special ed teacher at Craigville. Special ed, I can talk about that all night.
student support services. These are things like the library, the nurses, guidance. These are all ancillary services that are provided to the students. And we are seeing a bit of a decrease there, and that's only because we're not decreasing services. We did have a full-time person go to part-time. We have 2 retirements coming up in our nurses. And whenever anybody retires, you do see a drop in expenditures for salaries. Most often you do. So that's what you're seeing there, but it's not a drop in personnel. It's just changes in and movements. Athletic student activities. That's relatively stable. The increase that you see there, just over 3,000, is for supplies that the athletic director insists he needs. No, he does need.
Is $3,000 the highlight of the meeting? Poor Jared.
Operation and maintenance, this is the buildings. This is what it costs to run the buildings. The majority of this is heat, utilities, rubbish removal, snow removal. Maintenance, standard maintenance in buildings. So we do have increases in our contracts every year, roughly about 2% or so. I've anticipated that in this line item, and we are seeing an increase in utilities and water expenses actually. Some towns are revamping the way that they're billing for water, so we're seeing an increase there, and that's what's reflected in this line item. Property liability and employment insurance. We will see a drop in this line item, and that's due to unemployment. We do not have a large reduction in force, and we haven't had in quite a few years. Those that are leaving, for the most, are of their own accord moving on or retiring. So we haven't seen the reduction in force. That would require our unemployment insurance line item to be high. You're responsible for 2 years of that person, should you lay them off. And so we're sort of at the tail end of some of the reductions we did years ago. So we don't need the amount that we have had in there this year. And the benefits, this includes active retiree insurance, life, dental, health, and our OPEB trust is included in this line. And you'll see that it's actually decreasing by 82,000. And that is because the district belongs to Berkshire Health Group, and that group has been fairly healthy. Our claims have been lower. I sit on the board, so I'm part of the discussions and the decisions that are made. But our claims have been lower than the premiums collected. So there is no need to increase the premiums for our employees, which in turn, because we pay a certain percentage, helps the district. So we are seeing a decrease there, and the decrease is a 0% increase, but we do have people moving from active to retiree, and some of the retiree plans, depending on their age, are much less expensive than an active plan while they're working. So that's why you see the decrease there.
What's the OPEB trust right now?
OPEB, the district adopted an OPEB trust funding policy 3 years ago. This is our third year. And we have, the first year we deposited $150 into it, last year $400, and this year $400 again is budgeted for it. So we have about, the market didn't do us any favors in the last year, but we've rebounded a little bit in the last few months.
I think it's helped everybody.
So we're sort of at our same level, but hopefully it'll continue. And it's you know, it's a necessary savings because we have to pay for our retirees' benefits, and so we have to plan for that.
The town of Dalton, we're in the same process as well.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
got
think
that.
have we done ours yet?
Yeah.
We haven't gone through ours yet. What do we typically,
We have $1.6 million in there.
yeah, but what do we typically do? Don't we do 200, is it 500?
600,000,
We do 600 a year?
yes,
Yeah.
from our free cash.
Yeah, there's a difference there.
We can't do that.
Yeah, we can't do that, we
Well,
have
we
to
understand.
appropriate it.
Right, it's not a competition really, it's more of, it was more of a curiosity thing from Sandy.
I just have a question
We
though.
did 600 last year.
Where do you have that invested?
It's with PARS, and it's through Vanguard
Okay.
Investments, and it's a moderate approach. Our policy is online. It says what we've adopted, but it is through PARS agency.
We just went through to the state and did it that way. You got a good rate of return.
Their minimums, though, are very high. What was the minimum that you could start with?
We whatever we had, we were able to start with. So it was like $1.6 million. So
I think $1 million is the threshold, and we
is
didn't
it?
have that.
I don't know about that.
They're
Yeah.
working up to that.
Yeah, we used to be able to, before the, is it the Modern Municipal
Yes.
Modernization Act?
Yeah.
A few
Municipal
years
Act.
ago, regional districts would be able to use what is their free cash
Yeah.
to fund an OPEB trust, but with that act, it changed and we have to appropriate it.
Oh.
So that's why you see it as part of the operating budget. We can't use the excess funds for that.
That's unfortunate.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so too. The next page goes over the current district enrollment for 2018-19. Each school is listed at the top, each town is listed on the left. So the totals for each school are at the bottom, and the town totals are over to the right. And that's an important chart because we use a 5-year rolling average to determine the percentage that we apply to the operating assessments for the towns. So the years that we're using for this fiscal year 20 budget are from October 1, 2014 through October 1, 2018. Now on the next slide. And you can see each of the enrollments listed, the 5-year total, the 5-year average, and the corresponding percentage rate for each town. So Dalton is the third one in, and you can see 60.14% is Dalton's percentage of the operating budget. So if we go to the next page, the town operating assessments are then calculated here. So we have, again, each town listed, the 5-year rolling average listed, and the percentage of enrollment listed in the first 3 columns. The next columns are what determines the net town assessment. The required local contribution, which is the 4th column over, is the number set by the state, and that includes foundation enrollment, students in your town basically, regardless of whether they come to Central Berkshire, exclusive of vocational, students in your town and what the town is required to minimally pay to educate those students. So, and that's important to note because we are assessed for the students that leave via school choice, we're assessed for the students that leave charter. We're not assessed for vocational because it is separate. But that number includes all students, not just those attending Central Berkshire. The transportation assessment is a straight calculation. Transportation costs minus anticipated aid equals the net number multiplied by the town's percentage. The budget balance is the budget without transportation, without the net minimum, we subtract that, and then the percentage multiplied by the balance of that budget, remaining number. So you can see the net town assessment is the addition of the required local contribution, the transportation assessment, and then what is labeled the budget balance assessment. So each town's net town assessment is in the third column from the right. And sometimes we see a spike, like you see here with Beckett. They're seeing an increase this year of 8.11% over last year's total assessment. And that is, the majority of that is because their required local contributions spiked. So they have more students in their town than they did the year before. And it also takes into account property values, income, inflation factors, growth factors in the town. So you see spikes like that, you know, the total operating budget of Central Berkshire certainly has a part in the percentages of the increase, but if that's a reasonable increase in the operating budget, sometimes we do still see a high increase in assessments because of that number that's calculated by the state. So the average assessment, the total year-over-year increase in assessment, and Dalton is a third town, I'm sure you already found it, but the increase
Just pops out at you.
is 0.21%, 16,992. So total town assessments year-over-year increases 0.87%, less than 1%. I thought it would be helpful to include school choice trends in the next slide. And the darker column is the receiving, the lighter column is the sending, and this dates back to 2009. So you can see we've had an increase, and we actually have more receiving students at this point than we've had in quite a long time. This is December numbers from DESE, the Elementary and Secondary Education Department. We actually have more students in now than what is pictured here for this year. The next,
Question?
yes.
And maybe I'm just being totally stupid here, but, so, for the transportation, it doesn't take into account how far the buses have to travel to get the kids to the school. It's strictly on the number of kids.
And that's
Which
part of it.
doesn't seem really fair.
No, especially, I mean, the schools are in Dalton.
How much fuel is they taking?
So
The,
what,
the
what's
regional
is there,
agreement dictates how we
How
assess.
that's-
Yeah, we-
yeah.
when's the last time we've updated the regional agreement?
About 1992. And this particular issue has been argued, isn't it, Ken?
Yes, it is.
Oh, there's
Sharon
Ken.
and I tried
So it's been argued.
And not gonna be changed?
Nobody's budget.
No.
And we'll just say it's not, had nothing to do with the school district's wishes, it had to do with the other towns not cooperating in a different approach.
But, yeah, everything's complicated. You know, the cost of a bus is not how long it's
Oh,
on
I
the road.
know,
It's the driver
right.
for how long. It's not a number of miles issue.
It's
Now
a
we-
daily rate issue.
Yeah, we pay a
We
daily
know that
rate.
from VOCAD,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, we pay a daily rate
Mhm.
regardless of how many tiers that bus does. So we set up our runs so that they do the high school and middle school, and then that same bus does elementary, and we have feeder buses, smaller buses that bring the outer line kids into a mainline bus. So one bus on the road all day long costs one rate. So we try to do the tiers
Mhm.
to minimize the cost,
Mhm.
so that we're not having two buses that, when one bus could do it, you don't wanna have two.
Right.
Because, and that's why we have staggered start times, even between the middle and the high school.
Working as efficiently the best you can.
The last page of this presentation shows charter school trends, and these are students leaving the district to attend charter schools. And as of December, there were 25 from Central Berkshire, 22 of them were going to Bart and Adams, and 3 were going to the lower Pioneer Valley one.
The
Yeah.
Chinese immersion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we are seeing an increase there. Sometimes we see students go and come back. And so this is a fluid number a lot. It could look one way one day, and then when we file again, I think June is the next time we file, it may be lower because they didn't like it, or, so we do see that being a fluid number, but it is showing an increase in the numbers as of December each year. The last slide, and I apologize for how small it is. These are also on the website in a much easier read, has a much easier read to it. But these are all the existing capital projects that have been approved by the districts. And you'll see the description of the project and then the final payment year. So you can see, and capital assessments are assessed differently than operating. They are not a 5-year rolling average. They are the number of students in the building, the final October 1 numbers of students in the building at the year prior to the fiscal year. So, October 1 of 18, we're in fiscal year 19. So fiscal year 19 dictates fiscal year 20, although it's calendar year 18. So you've got fiscal year 19 dictating 20. So these numbers are the final numbers as of October 1, 2018, fiscal year 19. And it's broken out, that's why each project has to be broken out separately on its own, because the numbers change for the towns for each building. But you can see that there are 4 projects coming. The final payment is in 2022, so in 2023 they will be off the books. And the Craneville roof that was done, I think it was before my time, so I don't even want to guess as to when it was started. I think 10 years though, but I could be wrong. It's coming off the books in 23, so final payment 23, you won't see an assessment in 24 for that one. And so that's how you read this chart, and the total year-over-year difference is showing us a slight increase of $6,364, and that is due to the interest payments for the feasibility study that was approved a couple years ago. So that will, if the project goes through, that will most likely be rolled into the full project, and then you'll see that come on.
It'll get rolled into that.
Yeah, I think
It'll be
that's the way.
almost done by then.
Well, we've only been paying, you can pay interest only for 2 years. If the project doesn't go through, you only have 5 years to pay that back.
Right.
So if the project doesn't, it changes based on this vote. So if the project doesn't go through, you'll see interest and principal in 21,
Right.
22, and 23 for this.
23,
If it goes through, it'll roll in to the construction.
Are the other things gonna roll into this construction, like the sidewalks?
No.
Well, that'll be almost done.
Yeah,
But
that'll
the
be-
district, the doors, that goes to 29.
That goes to 29, and that's the
We-
one,
I mean,
it's, you'd have to look, to make that decision, when we go out to bond, we would have to look at the interest rates. And if we're getting a higher interest rate, which I believe we will, than this project, it wouldn't make fiscal sense to
Right.
do that,
Might as well
because
keep it going.
you'd be extending it 30 years
Right.
and paying more.
Right, exactly. Okay.
awesome presentation. That was really great. That was good. Thank you very much.
So, I had a question, she answered it.
The charts are short and sweet.
She answered it.
There wasn't any,
Some help. I've had lots of help. Mine are usually this big, and these
Wasn't
two
any
yell at me.
wasn't any contrived math that the 5-year average is 0.82% increase, and this year's is 0.82 increase also?
Yes, it's very coincidental. There was a negative year in there, which helped with that. So we had 16 was a negative. We were under the previous year.
Okay.
And then we had a couple of 2% years in there, but the rest were under 1%, so that's, I did it probably 20 times.
Hoping the number would change.
I said it can't possibly be the same.
Good place to
I know,
start,
you're
we'll go
paying.
backwards. I guess it's good to see some consistency there, rather than
Oh, you know, we,
significant increase or decrease.
superintendent and I and the school district, the school committee feel that, you know, this is a partnership.
Yeah.
And we try to be as reasonable and fiscally sound as possible when bringing forth the budget.
Oh, yeah, we actually, believe it or not, over the past, is it since 2015 or 2016? 2016. Generally, it's difficult to get my vote in favor of the school budget. And the reason for that is, I like to keep things the same, kind of living under the same constraints that the town lives under.
Right.
And you've been extremely good at doing that. And I don't look at the town of Dalton's assessment. If the town of Dalton's assessment ends up higher, it is what it is, but it's the overall, thinking of the entire picture.
District budget.
And if the district's overall budget stays within those constraints, then I feel that we're all, in that case, being fiscally responsible to the taxpayers. When it starts skewing off, we were seeing 6, 7, 8, 9. We even saw one that was a 13% increase one year, nearly buried the town. That was when we went down to 4-day work weeks, laid people off. It was very, very.
One of the biggest
It's-
volatile numbers in that budget is the health insurance costs.
Yeah, that's a big
And
one.
when that comes in reasonable, we have a good shot at keeping it low. When it doesn't, we have to look at everything.
Yeah. Generally, health insurance has kind of become relatively stable.
It has, and
Yeah.
what's going up now is the prescriptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's having that problem. Oh, little sad. All right.
Okay.
What is the
What do we
rate
wanna-
that the town contributes to the health, the school contributes to the health insurance?
It varies
Like
by
a
the
separate
plan that
year,
the employee or retiree is on, but it could be 85% to 75%. I think it's the
Yeah, we'll
lowest
do them
amount.
separate.
I just don't have a broken down percent increase each.
Don't worry about the percentage increase, just the overall budget.
All right.
We'll do that.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget for Central Berkshire Regional School District. Department number 310, final, given to us as of tonight and explained very nicely again from the superintendent's office, school committee, whatever we represent, I guess. Thank you very much.
The numbers.
I know a lot of hard work went into it, and again, we recognize that it's been kept at a very reasonable percent increase consistently. Thank you. But we would like to break them down into 3 different votes here. We'll move to approve the operating expense budget of number 5322 first, in the amount of $7,818,789.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the operating budget for Central Berkshire Regional School District, Department 310, in the amount of
Yep,
$7,818,789. Is there any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous.
Got one now.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget for the Central Berkshire Regional School District, Department number 310, again, sub-account expenses, expense budget number 5331 for transportation, excuse me, in the amount of $406,174.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the budget 310 transportation in the amount of $406,172. $74. Is there any discussion? No, people good with that. Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. It's she's gonna get it from Jane.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion, excuse me, to approve the budget for the Central Berkshire Regional School District, Department number 310, again, the final budget, for a sub-account, in this case, expenses number 5891, capital, in the amount of $164,265.
Second it?
A motion's been made, seconded, to approve the Central Berkshire Regional School Budget 310 capital in the amount of $164,265. Is there any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. All right,
Thank you again.
Thank
for
you
another great
very
Thank
much.
you
event.
very, very much
everything.
for your,
Thank you for having
both
us.
of the, both of the presentations. It was greatly
It is.
appreciated.
It
We had-
was.
Do you want these? These are full copies of the budget. It's online.
Are you serious?
We didn't want to hurt your
I'll
feelings.
find takers if you don't want it, don't worry.
Yeah,
You
we
know
need
what,
one
I'll
for-
take one for the book.
Take one.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. It's very productive. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting
We
me.
appreciate it. Thank you very much for the conversation.
No, thank you so much, really.
Thank you. Very nice meeting you. Thank you very much. Oh, very nice to meet you. I know it's really hard.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Barbara.
No problem. Thank you very much. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. Nice group, though.
Pleasure.
I don't think we're wrapping up already. Oh, you did?
Thank you very much. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. Very nice talking with you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Bill. Great group. Very nice. Thank you. Bye.
Sometime we'll have to stop and get together again.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much.
have a
Nice talking with you.
conversation
Thank you
about
very
budgets.
much. Absolutely. We'll be back next year.
Okay with me if you don't.
Take care, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
It's 7:30, so. Unless people wanna go do budgets
Keep
tonight.
going, you wanna, 7:29.
We're still in session.
We are still in session.
Adjourn.
Yeah. It's been a long night.
Can we wrap all these up next,
Do
at
you
our
think
next
we'll be
meeting?
able to wrap all this up?
We have,
I mean, if you,
about how many budgets?
we got a lot.
Everything in a paper clip.
Yeah.
We have 27 budgets to review tomorrow.
I didn't know if you wanted to do
Do you wanna do?
4 or
it?
5 of them, or.
Well, we know the school ones.
We
You
can,
wanna go?
we,
No, no, I'm just saying that would be like 13
what we
per
could
hour.
do, see if we can we get started, first of all, we get started a bit late tonight. So that's kind of what we have ended up against. Of course, it all ran longer than anticipated.
There's no.
Believe it or not, I
Yeah,
actually kind of thought that.
End in 2 hours, right?
No, we don't have to end in 2 hours. But would we rather try to get it done tomorrow and run long tomorrow, or would we rather run long tonight? I guess that's the real question to the committee.
Doesn't matter.
I'm okay staying for a little bit.
I'll
You
say
stay?
for, maybe we
All right.
get the insurance and the highway, these are, here, just so
When
you
we,
see what we're
when we
looking
plan
at.
on, when
You
we
wanna
plan on trying
do the
to.
insurance and the highway and get those
After
out of the
that's
way,
tomorrow.
you know, get
Yeah.
No,
those
no, 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 we're
done.
gonna be.
You like that idea?
Put a half an
Bill,
hour.
we're gonna get the highway and the insurance.
I'm sorry, can you get them up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
just
okay.
gonna-
Yeah, I just got started.
What? I'm
If
sorry?
for whatever reason, the thing's not working, the remote
We're gonna deal
control's
with the
not.
insurance of retirees, and then right, and the highway, the insurance and the highway. Because those are the small ones.
Ken, if you.
Just picking your seat, that's all.
There we go.
Get myself
The kids
situated.
are coming up there. All right, Karen, let's see if you got it.
I think these two tonight,
And then this term.
and then.
Yeah, because the Central Berkshire's done.
Pick
We're
something,
gonna
let me
go
know,
with
'cause I need that back.
Yep, all right, we're gonna, we decided.
Which one we doing?
These right here, insurance, and then highway after that. We can get that group done, it'll knock off.
Okay, those are the minutes. All right,
I didn't know if you, did we have minutes?
we'll do minutes tomorrow.
We can.
Oh, all right,
Yeah, we
I
can
didn't,
do all
because
the
I don't
minutes
have the
tomorrow.
minutes up there.
No, I'm
Made
gonna
a
go through
motion.
all the minutes.
All right, you're gonna have to fly.
Motion to defer them, yeah.
Wait the minutes, yes.
Okay, you're gonna have to move that down like 10 slides there.
Okay,
Oh,
what
yeah,
what are we
we
looking
start
for?
with
The first
the very
one,
beginning. We're looking for insurance 915,
That's what you're looking for.
you see how many we gotta go past.
I gotta find.
Was that ever sent to them?
9:15.
Yep.
There we go. All right, everybody.
Ready? All right, I'll make a motion to approve
Next to the
the
bottom. Yeah, I know, exactly.
budget for life insurance department number 915, comprised of expenses only in the amount of $15,271, and an increase of decrease of 14% from last year.
Seconded?
Motion has been made and seconded to approve budget for life insurance, budget 915, the amount of $15,271, decrease from the previous year. Is there any discussion?
Life insurance for active retired employees.
Is the life insurance for active or retired employees or both?
Both.
Both, okay.
And what's the reason for the decrease then, or just reimbursement?
People died off today?
No,
Yeah,
no.
right.
The town treasurer who prepared this budget went very carefully through the calculations to show he's able to reduce it by almost $2,500. It's just as a result of careful calculation.
Oh, that was
Review
nice.
of the past,
Let's
Let's
leave
be
it
more
at-
deliberate than the other ones.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Expenses to date.
Yeah.
Pretty much what that agreement was going on, sure.
Okay, you wanna move it?
Is there any further discussion?
No.
Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's unanimous.
Make a motion to approve the budget for the Department Employee Fringe Benefits, number 919, comprised of salaries. I've only got expenses down here at the bottom. Well, it looks like it's salaries of $37,180 and expenses of $2,100 for a total of $39,280. Thank you, Karen. An increase of 0.26% over last year.
Seconded?
Motion was made and seconded for budget 919, employee fringe benefits, in the amount of salaries, $37,180, expenses of $2,100, for a total budget of $39,280.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see if we can get the right spot here. Extended sick
So
leave
it's
benefits.
essentially level funded.
More or less level funded, huh?
Yeah.
Looks like we got
Okay. Sick leave buyback?
$100 for a fee, yeah.
Yeah.
How's the
How,
expenses?
at what rate do we do sick leave buyback, do you know? Just asking. What rate? Is it
Union
100%?
contracts generally say up to 80 days at half pay, so 40 days.
Oh, cool. How much do we accrue? Are we allowed to accrue?
Unions, a day, 15 days a year, day and a quarter a month. Is it
More of a, if, what can happen is, I just didn't know if they just accrued the sick leave over a long period of time. There are cases where a lot of sick leave can build up over time, but there's no disability. Like in the state of the DOT,
Right, there's no
we
disability
have no disability, so what it is why you're not, you don't use your sick leave, but you accrue that over a long period of time. If you have a disability, you can be out for a long period of time and still.
That's exactly what happens here.
And then we have that, we accrue that over a long period in the same, is that?
Yes. It's really without limit, but the sick leave buyback has limits.
The sick, oh, okay.
So you can accrue the days without limit, but in the end, you can only take so many, get paid for so many days that you have used. I guess it's 40 days.
Okay.
There's greater amount of buyback available to non-union employees, but they get much fewer, they get 5 sick days a year.
Right.
So they can accumulate those days and they get, I think, half payout.
Okay.
But there's much less accumulation.
Okay, I just didn't know if we, so, don't mind, I kinda answered my own question. Sorry about that. All right. So, is there any further questions? Boy, look, we've got a lot of paper shuffling going on. Holy smoke. Wow,
Well, we wanna keep
we
moving.
flipped everybody's turnip truck over here tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, seeing or hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes unanimously, thank you.
Make a motion to approve the budget for town insurances, department number 945, comprised of expenses only in the amount of $210,100, a decrease of 16.3% from last year.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve town insurances, department 945, in the amount of $210,100, comprised totally of expenses. Is there any discussion? Where is it? Employee benefits.
Back up, go down. Right there, Employee benefits.
We just did the
town insurances.
Run 945.
945.
Should be in
Oh, there it is. There's moves. Good.
Oh, Yeah.
Compensation, property liability insurance.
we're doing insurance. Okay. Just so you know.
So it looks like workers' comp insurance is down.
Yeah, why did this go down so much?
Again, this was a product of Don Fahey going over several years and looking very carefully. It's a product of two things, looking very carefully, and we have a 2-year rate guarantee from Maya, Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association. It was a 0 last year and no more than 2.5% this year. But just based on looking at our actual charges over the recent past, Don was able to lower that budget.
Wow. It's
Okay.
huge.
Property liability insurance dropped 30,000.
Did,
Yeah.
We get some credits.
Yeah, we get credits too, I should say that. Yeah, you know.
the property liability, taking
Yeah.
down Old Dalton, that's gotta help us a little bit,
We
doesn't it?
we took that off the schedule a few years ago. We haven't been paying insurance on it.
Haven't been paying on that one.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on town insurances? Seeing or hearing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's unanimous.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget for Forest Warden, Department number 294, comprised of salaries of $1,786 and expenses of $1,950, for a total of $3,736, and a total increase of 0.95% over last year.
Motion, motion has been made and seconded for Department 294, Forest Warden, in the amount of $1,786 in salaries and $1,950 in expenses, for a total amount of budget of $3,736. All right, any discussion on this?
So the Forest Warden increases to 2%.
2%, yeah.
Expenses are level.
Yes.
I thought John Ruffley was doing Forest Warden.
No, he's tree warden. Jerry Cahalan's the forest warden. And that's traditional, the fire chief fights forest fires.
Yes,
But
the
that's
forest for
within-
the trees.
Yeah.
You see in the
We should bring Jerry in here and beat him up for his $1,786.
Looks like it's pretty consistently spent.
Yeah, yeah, he makes sure he spends it well.
24.
Picking on
This is
Jerry.
a school committee, the school budget,
He takes it
and there were
so
3
serious.
different motions
Okay, so he spends up the whole thing.
with those amounts.
Pretty close.
Pretty close every year.
Expense.
Vehicle repair. We still have that, do we still have that power wagon over there, or did they buy something new?
I think that went, but I can't say for sure.
Whatever it is, doesn't cost much to operate.
No, it's pretty cheap. Pretty cheap. Okay, is there any further discussion on Forest Warden?
No. I don't have
Seeing or hearing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstain.
Oh, we have an abstention?
one abstain,
That is Tracy.
Tracy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget for Highway Department number 420. Comprised of salaries of $325,588 and expenses of $136,898 for total budget of $462,486. Total net decrease of 2.53% over last year, from last year.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for the highway budget, number 420, in the amount of $325,588 in salaries and $136,898 in expenses, for a total budget of $462.86. Is there any discussion? How come salaries went
$25,000.
On the other side.
Did they broke them up?
Go to the other side.
Yeah.
I think this is salaries. No, no, no.
Uh-oh, let me back up. Oop. There we go.
No, that's Forest.
Whoop, Forest Warden. I'm getting quick.
Right
quick.
there on the second, on the other, yeah.
Right there. How's that?
Yep.
I got it. Got it.
You got this, you're getting better at it?
Let me,
Didn't the
Yeah.
salaries change because he moved some of his staff
Right.
around to?
let me explain
Sewer?
what's going on here. That's exactly right, Tracy.
Yeah, 'cause that was from-
You have to look at this in conjunction with the sewer budget this year, because what we're doing is trying to comply with the EPA, DEP requirements for manning a system of our size. And they came from the infiltration inflow study done by Time Bond. So we've simply reallocated labor from the highway budget to the sewer budget.
Negative.
Can't believe it. Oh, boy. It's terrible.
Did we already do the sewer budget?
No, not yet.
That one
Oh,
coming up.
that's a fun one, wait till you see that. Yeah, no.
That's gonna be a fun one.
We can explain.
Really?
I hope you did.
How can a sewer budget be fun? Really? Think about what you just
You already
said.
did. You already did.
Oh.
440 was approved. 440 was approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did.
That's how we knew about
So
the
we're so
other
good.
position.
That's right.
We are
That's how we
so
were up.
good,
That's
we've
right.
already got it done.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah, so I think I explained
That's how we
it.
knew about the other position.
That's a good thing.
That's how you do.
Yeah.
She was
Right.
quick. Oh, you know what it was?
Okay, we're gonna do this, how many do we
I think we got two more to go.
No, we're good. Go ahead.
It was second.
No, we didn't. Oh, who's got it?
12,000, whoa, back down.
Well, yeah.
What's
Expenses
basin
went down.
cleaning miscellaneous to comply?
Again.
Gasoline tank monitoring.
Yeah,
Shouldn't that go into weights and,
No.
gasoline tank monitoring, state mandated?
Yeah, whenever you have buried fuel tanks, you have to put a monitoring system on them. That's why a lot of cities and towns are going to above ground tanks. You don't have to have all that expensive monitoring.
so that's the $1,800 line item underneath. It's just the way that
Am I hit?
it was done.
Oh, yeah. test.
Okay.
It's just the way it was lined up in the
Okay.
expenditure.
Yeah. Yeah, Excel didn't like you that day. Does anyone want to just take a peek at the,
So the 12,000 is actually the miscellaneous purchase services,
Right.
street sweeping, catch basin cleaning.
Right, and that,
And
again,
then the advanced testing was the,
yeah,
It's the
Yeah.
$1,800.
okay.
yeah,
It's the Merchant Center.
that's a stormwater management expense. And
That includes cleaning of basins down the stream, sort of rain like that. Can I apply?
We were cleaning the catch,
Can I apply
Karen and I
for
were out cleaning the
We were
catch basins
out
one
there
night because the road was getting flooded down on South Street. The road's getting,
Oh, it was
there's all
bad.
kinds of water, so we got a shovel in the back, we gotta take.
Cleaning our
Clean
clean
it
spaces.
out, clean it
I was
out.
like,
It was terrible.
No, I did, I was out there.
Yeah, she grabbed the shovel
I
too,
grabbed
it
the
was
other
pretty
shovel.
amazing.
Let's go.
Volunteerism at its finest.
Just-
Pete's being flooded out.
Well, it gets,
Oh,
yeah, it's right down by
that's
the
the
park,
point.
and the water just bubbles over.
Oh, it was
and
boiling
drains
out, yeah.
down, and then when you get it all hot with the leaves and stuff, I'm like, we gotta do something.
Yeah,
I can't take that.
it was actually pretty ugly.
It was.
Otherwise, I don't get out of my truck. All right, is there any other discussion on highways? Okay, seeing or hearing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That is unanimous, thank you.
Next budget, make a motion to approve the budget for snow and ice, department number 423, comprised of salaries of $27,267, expenses of $131,610, a total budget of $158,877, level funded from last year.
Motion has been,
Second, sorry.
motion has been made and seconded for the snow and ice budget number 423 in the amount of $27,267 in salaries, $131,610 in expenses, for a total budget of $158,877.
Okay, why is this? Why is
Well, they're
this-
always low.
Oh.
There's no, you didn't feel it necessary to go up on that budget,
No.
right?
Okay,
Well, I know, there's another town that
I
needs
know,
There's another
Oh,
one.
geez, I don't know who.
I get it.
So we end up.
Do you know roughly how much does John have an idea how far over we went this year?
You know, I
Yeah.
didn't look at that, and.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
And
I was
so
curious.
March expenditure reports didn't go out yet, so we weren't
Okay.
over yet in February, but I think
We were
we
not.
are now.
We weren't over in February?
No,
Really?
we started to go over the first week of March, I think, maybe the second week of March.
It's a little earlier than last year. John asked me for permission to overspend, but not much. 2 weeks.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
And this is the one budget.
And if you want that information, I can give it to you.
Right.
tomorrow.
it's one budget you can vote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tomorrow will be fine.
Yeah,
Just it's a curiosity thing.
I
we can
haven't
email
even
it
looked.
to you.
Been busy doing the budget.
So this ends up, any overspending ends up having to be funded from reserve account.
We usually fund it from free cash at the time. I mean, there's a number of ways it can be done. Dalton has traditionally just taken it out of free
Oh, free
cash.
cash, okay.
And I can tell you, long run average is in the low 30s, like 32,000.
That's what it looks like right here.
Yeah.
Yep. About 30,000 over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, we've always had, we've always kind of had it's a relatively healthy budget to start with.
All right,
So
so you
it's
don't wanna
not-
make
it's
it,
not
all
like
right,
that.
okay,
So
all right, I got
that's-
it.
It's not like that's a budget that, we've always budgeted that rather healthy.
Well, this is a
anyway.
little bit more than prior,
We went up a little bit.
yeah, like a
Past
couple
years.
years ago.
Right, we went up a few years ago on that budget.
When
But
you-
and that's why we're different than a lot of other towns in that respect, that we don't necessarily, because you can overrun that budget.
Right.
Many towns will underfund that budget. They won't, you can't go down, but you can go up.
If you go down
If you go down,
and you go over, you can't deficit spend it.
right,
So there's a catch.
right, there's
If
a,
you decrease it.
If you
right,
decrease.
there's a pretty serious catch to that. That's why some of them some towns so vastly under budget. The people that work for us and John, they keep a pretty tight leash on that budget. And so we have a pretty good, it doesn't vary, $30,000, I think.
That's the average. I mean, it's gone as high as 80 and it's
Oh, yeah,
been as
we've
low
had-
as
Yeah,
few thousand. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the average over a very long period of time.
But even last year, with the snow and all we had.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It was a little- in the
Yeah,
low
it was
30s.
state.
you know,
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
a,
it looks good.
that's, to be honest with you, from a taxpayer viewpoint, this is a more responsible budget
Right.
than it is, and I think we've advocated for that for years anyways, just that, you don't wanna, like Sandy just said, you don't wanna
If you increase it too much and don't use it.
increase it too much and don't use it, then you
No,
don't have the
decrease
ability,
it.
decrease it too
Decrease it.
much. You don't have the ability to go back, so.
We've increased it when expenses are consistently rising, so it makes sense. to
Right,
increase it.
right, but like I said, using it as, budgeting responsibly with it.
Part of what sometimes helps this budget is if the snow occurs during the daytime, because if it does, and they're out plowing, they're plowing in the highway department, not in the snow and ice department. But if it's at night or on the weekends, that's when this department comes into
Right.
play.
Oh,
Right.
This is an overtime budget.
Plus,
Snow and
yeah,
ice is over.
this is an overtime,
Yeah.
it's really an overtime.
We had a lot of weekend snow this year,
Yeah.
Yes. we did.
and icing,
Yeah.
so.
Ice has been, inherently, I've talked to a few of the foremen, and the ice was a real problem this year, a real problem this year. They struggled, all the cities and towns struggled. That's why it's probably the materials that are overrunning, more than likely.
Both.
Oh, really? Both, huh? Weekends, wow. All right,
Okay.
any further questions?
Nope.
Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passed unanimously, thank you.
Make a motion to approve the budget for streetlights, department number 424, comprised of expenses only in the amount of $52,384, a decrease of 42.7%.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the budget 424 streetlights in the amount of expenses only being $52,384.
And this is primarily due to the changing all the lights.
Changing out the lights and
And
everything.
it's simply as a result of going to what's called the S2 rate, because the town now owns the lights. We haven't even factored in the additional savings from the LEDs, because
Electricity.
we're not getting charged yet.
So now
Very
that
nice
We own them
job you
instead
did.
of paying the electric.
That's right, so we're not paying to rent them anymore, and that dropped significantly.
Sure.
But they still maintain them, or we
No, we're
maintain them?
gonna have to
We
maintain them.
Well,
Yeah.
maintain them.
Well, how much would the, I mean, do they have any idea what the maintenance cost would be on
We
that?
do, we got and I can't remember what the number is, I thought that they gave us an estimate. Tanko Lighting was the contractor that assisted us in putting in the lights, and they gave us an estimate for maintenance. I thought it was, I'm just
I know.
trying to recall 16,000 or something like that, which even seems high, because the LEDs are guaranteed for 10 years, but probably the useful life of 20 to 25 years.
Right.
But you're gonna have arms that get screwed up in the weather and that kind of things, or ones that just glitch out, so there's gonna be some maintenance costs.
So we,
Do we have that in a budget though, or do we wait? Is it gonna go in this? Where will that?
We really haven't budgeted yet. We probably will bring on a contractor to get some experience with maintaining it. Pittsfield maintains its lights, but we just haven't gotten there yet. One of those,
Okay.
one of those details we haven't worked out.
Okay,
They don't
just
need much,
you out of
It's
the.
all right.
I
would we
know.
would
But-
we do something along the line of, kind of along the line of what we did initially with sidewalks and hire a contractor to do them?
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, there are capable contractors out. We don't have the bucket truck, we don't have the equipment.
Well, yeah, we
So we need
don't.
to get some experience. It's quite likely our highway department can take care of it when we get a little experience.
Oh, another thing for the highway department.
They may need a new truck.
You're killing
They
me,
need a
you're
bucket
killing me,
truck.
Ken.
Need a bucket truck.
Bucket truck.
To do that. So right now, it's better to hire a contractor, and we'll probably pay an hourly rate
Yeah,
for
let the
them to
fire.
come in.
No
Get the
fire.
fire truck out there.
Oh, okay. I get it. All right. All right, now we've had plenty
It
of
might
fun
be
with this
just
budget.
like one or two things at a time, you
Yeah,
know?
you
So
might
I-
not, at first you're not
This
gonna
budget's
get
headed there.
first
I'll
time.
It's
I'll
gonna
have to-
be, yeah, it's in
I'll
a
have to
good
make sure I
place.
put this one in my, put the kudos in my report on this one.
Yeah.
It is,
I
yeah,
started
that was a
writing
good
my
one.
report.
Good for you.
The kudos for what?
For the
This
light.
kid,
For
the
the
light,
annual.
the lights,
For the
street lights to go down, that's already paying for that, we did that debt exclusion for it. We haven't even gotten to the LEDs and we're already paying it off with some of the work we've done with that.
Debt exclusion for?
I thought we did a debt exclusion for that.
Not for the LEDs,
For
it
the
was straight
LEDs.
authorization to borrow.
Oh, we did an authorization to borrow.
We did an authorization
I
to
missed
borrow, yeah.
And we're not even gonna use it.
It looks pretty much like we won't have to borrow a nickel because we got higher, grants than we had anticipated.
That's
from
awesome.
lower costs, yeah.
That's
So,
great.
most of
They
it
did a
pays
great
about
job.
10,000, we'll just move money around at the end of the year.
We'll
So
use
what
this
did I-
budget to pay that 10,000 that's in the debt.
Did that just come out of my
So,
mouth?
let me ask you,
It was my
what
inside
happens
voice
to
coming
that?
right out of my mouth.
If we don't use that money, what happens to it?
The
Just
borrowing,
Yeah.
it gets rescinded.
We'll rescind the authorization to borrow, it goes off our books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't, you can't have that like sitting on the books or.
No, it'll be rescinded.
Okay. All right, is there any other discussion on streetlights? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. I've had enough.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second it?
Do you have a list of what we're going over tomorrow?
There's a motion, motion on the floor, motion on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?